Hi,
Hello.
everybody.
Welcome to another People Rising. People
As I
rising to
finish the
get up
last of
and
my
walk out
jelly
the
beans.
office. How are you guys?
I'm doing
Doing
good.
well.
A little crazed this past couple weeks, but
It's been an interesting week, at least for me, right?
how so?
I'll tell you, one of the things that really threw me for a loop this week was this release from the UN, this report on the climate change. Wow. That if you haven't taken just some time to read the Washington Post, I'm sure there are a number of different outlets that had articles about it. But the Washington Post article was what I posted on LinkedIn earlier in the week. It was like a punch in the face, and it scared me. I was scared.
I've been having climate anxiety panic, since the summer. What got me was the complete depletion of the Alaskan crab population that just suddenly seemed
Oh,
to
I
have
hadn't heard
disappeared
about that.
overnight. Oh yeah, it's terrifying to me. It's just
Yeah,
yeah.
that is those type of things where you're seeing complete ecosystem breakdown is is really, really horrifying. One of the things that they talked about in this article was this typhoon off the coast of Africa that lasted for a month. And then I thought to myself, what would happen if we had a nor'easter on the eastern seaboard, right? That's where we have these nor'east that lasted a month. Could you imagine what that would be like?
Well,
It's
yes,
apocalyptic,
we've seen it in California with this
right?
atmospheric river after atmospheric river. I mean, my I was on a call with some friends in Oakland, and they just talked about the number of downed trees because the ground is so wet that the trees can't stay up. It's terrifying.
Anyway, oh my goodness, I forgot, folks. I forgot to. I don't know. I don't think Shelly. By the way, welcome everyone. We should introduce ourselves. We got right into but it's like right here.
Well,
It's front line.
climate anxiety will do that to you.
Yeah, I mean, it terrified me. So my name is Linwood Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of Accelerate. We help people get work done faster. To my left is Peter. Peter, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Peter Laughter. I'm the founder of True Bearing, and because Rockstar employees are seeking meaning, we help companies tell stories about purpose and culture to attract the people who matter most.
And Karen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Breeker. I'm here in New Hampshire, so the whole idea of nor'easters is well known to me. My role is the head of HR, head of people ops. I've been in a number of different industries, and I know the last couple of weeks I've talked about my search for a new role, and I hopefully within the next week or two I'll be able to announce a new endeavor for myself.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Look forward to that. Look forward to that announcement.
And whoever they are, they're lucky to have you.
Sure,
Why, thank you.
absolutely.
Very
No doubt
kind.
about
And
that.
I feel lucky to be joining their team. It's a great group of
It's
people.
really exciting. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so exciting. So Kim is having some challenges with her camera. She just sent me a note. So she'll be joining shortly. Shelly is out with COVID, which is sad. I'm sorry that she's not feeling well, but hopefully she'll be back next week. She did manage to get this, though. That's Shelly's group, the Learn Coach Model Group. She always gets that in right at the beginning. So she did make sure that got out there. It tickles me, Shelly does. And Tracy's not with us today either. So today we're going to talk about, right, some of the last episodes. We've had three great guests. Did we have our first show and then the three guests?
That's it. This is
Wow.
this is number 5.
Time flies when you're having fun, right, guys?
It's
It
true.
certainly does, and we certainly are.
Yeah. So, we're just gonna open it up for discussion. Anything that people who are watching want to talk about, and we're gonna talk about the last few weeks. And here she is. We're not gonna talk about that stuff before Kim Blue has a chance to introduce herself. Hi,
With
Kim.
those
Welcome.
awesome earrings. My goodness, that you look so cool.
I know the longer I do this, the more of my personal style you're going to get. So I think I've warmed.
I can't wait for next week already.
Yes.
I love it. We have there is some style in this. I can't say that I'm bringing it, but there is some style.
Well, I think that style needs to make up for the complete lack of style that I have. So
I'm just happy to have my voice back this week. So hello, everyone. Kim Blue. Happy to be here with you all for another really, really thoughtful and engaging conversation. I was looking forward. I look forward to all of them, but I was definitely looking forward to our conversation this week because it's just the crew. It's just us. We don't have a guest this week, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you too, Kim. So
tell us about your business before we move on.
I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Kim, tell us about your business before we move on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Peter. So I recently took the plunge to dangle my own shingle out there and started K Blue Consulting. It is all focused in HR and organizational effectiveness, org strategy, coaching and development. So those are all the things that I'm super passionate about and what I spent my time doing when I was in-house as an HR leader, leading teams, but also coaching, developing people, designing strategy. And so now I am taking that and helping other leaders who want to think intelligently about how to do that. But also it puts me in the space to be able to do very cool things like collaborate with other folks that we see on the screen here. So that's the very, very exciting part about it. So that is K Blue Consulting in a nutshell. So thank you, Peter, for the nudge, because I would not have done it had you not said something.
That's awesome. I'm glad Peter. Good job, Peter.
I tried.
And good job, Kim. You pointed something out that I don't think we've mentioned it maybe since the first episode, but since our first show, which I want to I kind of want to say again. Actually, you just made me think of it, which is that the purpose of this show, or why I spoke out and asked these guys to join me in this endeavor, is because the complexity of the challenges that we face in our world and in our organizations is so great that I really wanted to create a community where people would come together to share their problems and also to solve problems and share solutions, right? And in doing that, my hope was that we would accelerate the solving by coming together in a community where we're, solving problems and sharing the solutions, that people would feel that when they did projects, there would be less risk, right? Because someone else had done a project and they were really just taking that and learning from it and applying it to their situation and sharing, across the board. And that would, lower the risk, but also increase confidence, right? Yeah, so I don't want to go on too long about it, but that's really my hope. So we want people to definitely engage with us as we're talking about different issues. Let us know if there are things that you'd like us to talk about on the show. I want to encourage that, because that's what this is all about. We've got to get to a place where we're solving problems faster, because we got big challenges ahead. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'm stepping down on the soapbox now. So,
So what have we
3
learned
weeks
about?
or anything? What's up?
Yeah. Sorry, Lenwood, you froze for a second, so I was jumping
Oh.
in, but you're back. Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, well, what have we learned in that area is the question of dealing with increasing complexity and being able to solve problems more effectively.
Well, one of the things that I learned, I won't say that I learned it in the last 3 weeks. I learned it before because I've been talking to Ed Morrison a lot. But I did not appreciate this distinction between adaptive problems and technical problems. And what Ed explained to me was the technical problems are the problems where we understand the problem, and so we know that there is someone who can help us solve that problem. So when we have a plumbing issue, we call a plumber. And, it's very straightforward. And that there were more technical type problems in the industrial age. Not that we didn't have complexity in the industrial age, but today we have much more complexity. Adaptive problems are problems that have no root cause. There are many, they're extremely complex. There's no root cause. So, focusing on that is not a great idea. And then there could be many solutions, right? And so just the distinction between those and understanding that one of the challenges that organizations have today is lots of experience, right, approaching those technical problems, not a lot of experience or tools to deal with those adaptive challenges. So anyway, that's sort of a long-winded way to say, there's this difference, and understanding when you have an adaptive problem is really important, because then you won't be trying to solve it with, a hammer when it's not a nail. So that was a big one for me.
What about you guys, Karen and Kim?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we talked about last week with transformational change, right? And I think some of the conversation that got sparked as a result, tying values into what you're trying to achieve, and really, and I think I've always known this, and you feel this, but being able to pull those along that are already on board with you and focus the efforts and the energies there. I think what happens is, right, it's the squeaky wheel that's the loudest, that gets the most attention, but that's not you. And that's oftentimes in an organization, the naysayers. It's not where your best efforts and your best use of energy gets spent, but we're so easily distracted by that and pulled off course. And so, I think we all have known that, and we feel that, but just even to have that simple reminder of how it impacts transformational change and what that means, and the impact it has on whether or not we achieve it, and who owns it, right? It's something we talked about offline as a group, when we were talking about what we wanted ourselves to be. And we said, we all own it. Every single one. It's not the C-suite, and it's not the midline, the frontline managers, and it's not the hourly folks at the bottom. We all, every single one of us within an organization, own this.
That was really big for me, and particularly the don't engage with your detractors. It was like, oh, that's so obvious, but here I am thinking I'm going to convince everybody, and
Right.
not that successful so far. You'd think I'd learn by now.
Right.
Yeah, that's so funny though, that you mentioned that, because the thing, one of the nuances that Greg mentioned is that you may not even know, right? You may not know who's like sitting there stewing and just, going to undermine, waiting for the opportunity to undermine what you're doing, potentially for an irrational reason, something, you know, it's a head scratcher. I mean, I get it. But you know, I guess I'm a little bit more of a natural collaborator. You know, not to say that I've never been in a situation where I'm like, I really don't want to do that. But it doesn't happen that much. Actually, in Greg's book called his book Cascades, he talks about the cascade is the movement, right? And the level of resistance. And you know, the people who are gonna like go with you, their resistance is low. It's like 0, 10, right? It's those people that are up in the 70, 80, 90% resistance that you want to look out for. And you may not know, they might be sitting quietly waiting.
I think I will add to that in terms of what a little bit of what everybody said. And I think what stuck out the most to me in particular related to values, what you were talking about, Karen, is what some of what Greg said last week, but then also when we were having our conversation with Aaron, this whole notion of like, so we have all this data and we know a little bit about what's out there. How do we use that to now inform the transformational change, but then also being very proactive and saying, I'm not going to seek anybody's approval. So it's that whole shift in the approach, right? Meaning what you said, Karen, right? We all own the change, right? If we own it, then let's own it and do it and not wait for permission to be able to do what we know we need to do, because now we've got the data that tells us this is now the way we do it. So find your tribe inside, get them on board, knowing what it's going to be, and then let the change organically have that impact so that as everybody sees the benefit of what it's doing or that the impact that it's having, the change speaks for itself. And it's then you naturally knock down some of that resistance that might be there because people are actually seeing it happen in real time. They understand that it could potentially be minimal disruption, or they see where they fit into the change. So that's what I've been kind of stewing over this last week between that conversation and how I've been thinking about even bringing that into like the way I practice my own business, right? As I'm coaching leaders on saying, this is the way that we approach the change, or who are the partners, the allies, of the collaborators inside? Where do we want to mobilize and start this? And then how do we bring that to the forefront to say, we saw an issue, we went ahead and moved forward. This is where we are. Here's where we're going to go. Just know that it's happening, but not asking that permission, which is a little risky, depending on the nature of your organization. But that's also how you cultivate a culture of change and let it and really just get people to adapt to it in real time, because otherwise people will just stay where they are and feel how they feel about it, and we don't move the needle.
Yeah. Well, and we're not conditioned for that, right? So that empowerment piece, we're not conditioned for it. And it is a habit, whether it's the leader who's willing to give up that, that control, that command and control role, right? To be able to say, yeah, I trust you. And maybe you're going to come up with something better than what I would have, or collectively we'll come up with something better. That's a habit. That's a muscle that has to get worked. And for the recipient of that too, especially if you've worked in a command control environment, you're not conditioned to just go and do. You're sitting back, always waiting for somebody to tell you. And it's just, how do we, what I think about a lot is, how do you exercise that muscle for everybody so they become conditioned where it just happens naturally? And we're just not there yet. In most organizations, we're not there yet. And it's a spectrum. And I think there's some that haven't even started. And there's probably very few that are on the opposite end of the spectrum where they're really humming along.
That's a really great point, Karen. And I think the conditioning, because it really does go both ways. I remember I ran the New York City Marathon in 2006, and I ran with Memorial Sloan Kettering's team. And we were doing a long run. It was from the Intrepid the aircraft carrier in Manhattan. We started there and we went all the way up the river, the West Side Highway to the George Washington Bridge, over into the Palisade Park and back again. It was our longest run, and it was a large group of people doing it, and the route was confusing. So we were all given these little strips of paper with instructions, which weren't that good. And in the beginning, I'm running with a large group of people, maybe about 15 folks. And I mean, these are people who can raise a large amount of money, for the privilege of running 26 miles and get up at 5 a.m. every Saturday to show up at a training run. And we got to a point where it was confusing and no one was willing to say this way. And at the time, as an entrepreneur, I thought, oh, people need leadership, is what I thought. But later, what I realized is no, that people are just so beaten by they've got, we've as American employees, we've got our initiative beaten out of us. And it's a self-continuing process. Leaders think like, oh, they need to be lead, and employees are like, I don't want to put my neck out there. And so I think that Kim's, and with Kim, your point, the other thing that I really love what Greg said is it doesn't take a large group of people to turn the tide. Yeah, and that was so exciting. Yeah.
I think sometimes we think we need to have the masses behind us in order to feel like affirmed or validated in what it is that we're doing, when really we can have the same impact if we just get started. And then people will, like, can we get comfortable knowing that people will join along the way, right? Forrest Gump ran by himself, and then people figured out at some point that, oh, this is why I want to run. This is the meaning. This is the impact to me. And then they joined in progress. It didn't stop him from running, but it allowed people to kind of come organically onto the run. And then they had meaning behind it. And the next thing you know, he had a whole group of people who were doing it, and they were along for the ride, literally until he was like, I'm done. And from there, it could be whatever it is. It's sort of the same concept with the chain, right? That's how I think about it, in very simple, plain terms that people might be able to understand. But you don't always need everyone behind you. But that's also like a mindset shift, because again, we're used to it being like, we got to have everybody on board. You really don't. But there might be some fear there. There might be some risk there. There might be other things that are showing up for why you believe what you believe, as opposed to saying, what's the harm in doing something new or different? And if we mess up, or if there's a misstep, then we can course correct in real time. That's the benefit of staying agile and nimble. All things you have to do when you're changing something anyway, right? So I think there's a lot to be said for finding your 2, 3, 5 people, figuring out the pieces, and then stepping forward into whatever is ahead for you.
Kim, have you ever seen that short TED Talk on how to start a movement?
I have not.
Oh, definitely Google it. You'll love it. But it is
Okay.
It is narrating probably a guy narrating a 3-minute video of a music festival where there's this guy doing this crazy dance all by himself, and people are making fun of him. Yeah, but he keeps doing this very, very specific dance moves, and then one guy comes over to do the dance with him, and the guy corrects him how to do it, and then but by the end of the video, people are just running to do this dance, and the guy talked about the leader being less important. It was all about the first follower, because the first follower turns a lone nut into a movement, which I thought was brilliant. So
the first follower.
Yep.
I'm going to use that. Yeah. I love that. Because that's really all you need.
Yep.
Right? Then that's like a sign of safety. Right? We talk about psychological safety, and we talked about, and I can't remember the phrase that Greg used, but he used a specific word around like resistance to change, or phrase around that. That first follower helps people know that like it's okay. Like it almost builds confidence in where we're going, or what, I don't have to be the first person. I can now go and do it because I see somebody else that I trust, or jumping into the pack. So I like that.
I really like when we talk about, how anyone can, or that we own, right? We own the change in our organizations. We are the facilitators of it. That model, I think, is you know, is transformational, because people, when they begin to exercise that muscle, when they begin to use that, right, it's going to make for a much more engaged workforce, right? People who are seeing that they have a part in making things happen. I love that. I used to say that when I was when I was in out, not that I'm not in corporate America now, but when I was, you know, among the rank and file, you know, I would say, you know, working together to get the job done. I like that part. I did a lot of corny stuff in the office, and that was one of them.
I think between you singing to us, Peter should show us the dance from the
Yeah, you do not. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I didn't give you the arm, because that also is part of it. Working together to get the job done. I don't know where I picked that up. But
you know, Lenwood, that's one of your talents, is you are unabashedly you, you know, like unapologetically Lenwood. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know how motivational it was, but I liked it. Oh man, so we're not. I'm not sure whether the chat is. I'd like to think it's a technical error. That because we're not seeing any chats, but any comments. But you know, if you're out there and you have a comment or you have a question, you know, feel free to send it in, and I will definitely post it.
Oh, well, somebody wants to see Peter dance, so
I was going to say, Peter, you just said.
Yeah, that's
it.
There it is.
Go.
Thank you.
You've got a fan.
It's working.
I'm so sorry to disappoint you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to put out there. If we know for a fact that there's data, right? And we talked about the labor economics conversation, the things that Aaron put together for us and presented. So we know there's data, and we know that there's all of these ways to approach the change. From what we've done in our own change management strategies, or the seats that we've sat in with change, if we were to embark on change now, like if someone said, hey, this is what we need, or here's the direction that we want to go in, where would we start? What does the beginning of it look like, given what we've all kind of talked about and learned and brought to the table over these last few weeks? How would we invite someone in, or what's our entry point?
That is a great question.
And I think that's an interesting one, because I was just thinking, as you were saying, about, because we have, Greg talking about the complexity of change and focusing on those who are interested in that change. But yet we have this increasingly complex world. And then we have the Ed Morrison point that that leadership and authority is dynamic, and it shifts over time. So I think those 2 points, and then we have the third issue, is that we have, a labor force that is increasingly stretched for the needs. We keep thinking ChatGPT is going to take our work away. I'm very confident that it will not. And we're not going to face an abundance of employees. We're just going to face a cascade of the amount of work that we have to do as a result of this productivity.
That's my big fear about ChatGPT. My big fear about ChatGPT, not to go off on a tangent, and is that it will just add more work, that it will add more burden for people, and it will not solve the problem.
I've I created some prompts to help me with some things on ChatGPT, and I realized, as I was like, I expect this to get me done in an hour, and I'll get it done in an hour, and I'm still working on it, and I realized, it's just made the task so much more complex and bigger. So it's I've been wrestling with your fear all morning, Len, but it's real.
It's a pattern, right? It's a pattern with the technologies. It's and I want to address your question, Peter, but it's a pattern. Like when we got email, right? Oh, this is great. I can just communicate so quickly. The next thing you know, we're buried in emails.
Yes. Yeah, but I think that's it. Is that the issue of complexity It ain't getting better. It's just, I mean, our worlds will be increasingly more and more complex. And if you just look at the last couple months, the amount of AI enabled tools that are totally game changing. I mean, there's a text to video generation tool that just came out, was released Monday, where you could say, make me a video, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And it will do it. Not a very good one, but wait 15 minutes. I'm sure it'll be fantastic. And so we have this increasingly complex world, and then so these hierarchical structures are having less and less of a place. And not us to say that hierarchy is not, there's no place for it, but it's not going to be. We need to really hold on to this understanding that leadership is dynamic and fluid, and we need hierarchical structures to recognize that. Yeah, to recognize that, oh, if we're going to start this project, that we need to be able to tap into the expertise and brilliance of the people who are working on it, and let them run and let them lead when appropriate. So I think that understanding is going to be really critical, and that importance to really focus on the people who are most excited about it and willing to do it. Yeah.
So to answer your question, Peter, about where we should start and how this should work, I have been thinking about this issue for a number of years and working on and making it happen. This was not planned, but when I think about what Greg articulated and what Ed articulated, I see those things as skills. Okay. Ed has the strategic doing, which is the 10 skills for working together better, that has an incredible impact on productivity. Greg's program is a set of skills, having knowledge. So I really see that these types of things are skills. They are skills that we need to give to people. We need to enable. People need to know how to do these things. And there's a certain way that we can do that, but they need to know how to do these things so they can use it. I mean, right now, I think I will make a gross generalization, and here's the gross generalization. There hasn't been enough investment in getting people out of the industrial age and into the digital age. A lot of focus on the technology, not a lot of focus on people. And so now we're playing catch up, and we need to really rethink how we do learning. Right? Because the old model for learning was really only a limited number of people in the organization at the top of or the high potentials got the leadership training, and nobody else did. And that model just doesn't work anymore. And I know it's out there because my wife is in corporate America, and she was in a high potentials thing at her company. It was only 10 people. Are you kidding me? 10 people in the leadership development program.
Out of approximately how many, Len? Just out of curiosity. Sorry.
Well, there's thousands of people in her organization.
But maybe it starts before we even get to the workplace, right? So just this morning, I was talking to a woman from the Career Center at my alma mater, and I'm working with them to help develop some curriculum as part of their co-op program. So all co-op students, and these are mostly engineers and some technical folks, but all co-op students have to go through this summer program before they can do their fall and spring co-ops. And, the question that was asked of me this morning was what HR stuff should we cover? What would be good for you to cover in the curriculum? And, not things like the harassment training, but other HR stuff. Well, that's an opportunity, right? Isn't that where we really need to begin? Go back more to the beginning, because if we can train these students early on before they even get to the workforce? Don't they start to become some evangelists for transformational change and what it takes? Now, yes, they're going to come up against resistance from the people who don't understand it and don't want to do it. But, your tribe of one, it only takes one follower, right? If you have that fresh energy that's coming into an organization and their values are aligned, right? Because that's the key. Their values are aligned. They've learned this through different ways, and we're bringing them in through college hire programs. What could come of that? I mean, imagine that. We're talking about in the boardroom, in those conversations about high potentials, but let's go way back to the beginning and that educational process on the college or even high school level.
I think that's a great point. Peter, did you have something that you wanted to?
Well, I think that's also a really interesting thing, because I think that folks of our very general age have also been conditioned to accept and ignore a certain amount of bad behavior, which the generation who's coming into the workplace has no tolerance for that whatsoever. And I think it's one of the greatest things that I think is most exciting, because it's just like, nope, not gonna be interacted with that way. Yeah. And people are shocked, but it shouldn't be shocking. It's what's shocking to me is like, why did we put up with all of that for so long? Yeah.
Different time.
Yeah.
So I love what you all have said about like it being skills and sort of like the point at which we kind of introduce this, right? Is it high school? Like, what is it at each level? So my click down question is, if we all had to contribute a skill that we think is foundational in helping people get comfortable with change, right? Outside of what we know, right? Because strategic doing contributes skills, and we know that there's skills that come with that. But like, what would we say? What would each one of us identify as like, so here's the skill. If we were building our people rising bucket, right? What would we put in our skills bucket that we would say is kind of foundational, meaning no matter what changes or where you start, you have to be able to kind of know how to develop these things, or these are the things that we're looking at.
And are you saying individuals need to know this, or the group as a whole together, what they bring to the table?
I actually think it could be either. I think maybe we say to this group, hey, in order, if you're my first follower, Peter,
I
and
am.
I'm leading us, right? Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll be too.
Okay. Well, thank you both. Right? If you two are my first followers, and I'm thinking we need to get to this level of change, I might say, okay, in order for this change to really stick or to be meaningful, people who come into this or who are going to be on board with this change need to have the skill of being agile, meaning if we start in one direction today, and as through our learning or through our doing, we need to make a quick or pivotal change in doing something, we're going to be able to make that in such a fashion that we don't have to go back and rehash. We understand that where this change is going to get us. Or if I say, we need to be, we need to be active listeners, meaning we're listening for understanding and not trying to be right. We're not listening to try to do anything other than make sure that we're taking in the information so that we can make thoughtful and informed choices, decisions, course corrections, or whatever. Like, if those are the two skills I'm looking for, it could be the group needs to have that as a whole, or parts of the group need to have that and other parts of it. So I think it could go either way, but I'm curious to know, like, if we had to build this bucket, what would you put in the bucket of skills that we need or that we think would be beneficial? Let me say it that way.
Well, I don't know if it's a skill, but I think shared values is a really important one.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to also say, I don't know if it's a skill, but I think courage is important, right? And the example that Peter gave of the person doing their dance in the middle of the music festival and having the courage to keep sticking with that dance, even when everybody else said that's weird or that's strange, until there was that follower that joined, and that person had the courage, and then the next person. So courage to take the risk and to move forward and to know that not everybody's gonna go, hey, that's cool, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's like not everybody's for you.
What is that, Lenwood? We can do it. Working what?
It's working together. I mean, that's to me, the first thing, the most important thing that we need to learn is how to work together better. And I always think about skills from the perspective of let's learn it. We're going to learn it and it's going to get better. So I think about it from the perspective of, okay, well, I want to get like to Kim's point, like what are the big things? What are the big things that people need to learn that I would want them to get better at and better at over time? Number one to me is working together better. And then number two is learning how to learn. Most people don't know how to learn, man. And I hate to say that, but that's the truth. We got to learn how to learn. Learning's got to be part. And I'm not talking about sitting and doing like the compliance training learning. I mean, learning from your experiences, learning from the work that you're doing, experimenting, learning from that, and adapting, because adaptability is critically important in the digital age. So that, working together and learning how to learn and making that systematic and building from there, that to me, that's how you start.
I would add storytelling is a pretty key skill. Yeah.
I agree with that.
So that was a big one in the tech space, especially. So when I was inside, right, I worked for a company, and I was able to support both the development side, right, so the engineers, and then I also had like the PMs, right, that supported them. And so part of the PM partnership was to be able to understand what's the story, what's our internal story, and how we talk to clients and customers about that, because they built tools and resources that we all use today, right, for that. But it was also, when we get to this customization, like what's the story that we're telling? And so storytelling really became a needed skill, because not everybody could be able to do it. And you had to be able to sort of speak the language on both sides. It was interpretation and storytelling at the same time. So I like that one a lot. I think I would add curiosity to that. I think being curious is a way to gain that understanding, because if you're curious, you're going to ask questions, you're going to put things out there. I was recently on a talk during this month, and the woman that was on the panel with me really made a really strong case for being curious, and how that both allows you to take in information, to both be direct and intentional, without losing this notion of breaking up some type of communication gap or something. And then it's the segue to getting to shared value, Peter, right? It's also how we figure out how we collaborate. So I think this, and she made some points about curiosity as a skill that I had not considered. And so that's one that I would submit to our bucket that we're building here.
And that's a that's a great point, Kim. I really like that, because it's not just general curiosity. It is curiosity in the face of opposition too, which I think is really important, right? So often, if you say something I disagree with, my tendency is to push against that. But when we stop and are curious, well, why is it that you think that way? Or why is that important to you? Or, now it might be that I'm missing something. There's all sorts of things. There's a component to this. So I think that's curiosity is a really, and in being able to use curiosity to funnel a model of conflict that is not you versus me, but you and me versus the problem. And if we hold that, when
Yes,
we run
Peter.
into when we run into conflict, that's, oh, Kim is the problem. If I can be curious and say, well, what is the problem, and engage with you from that perspective, you're not going to be against me, and we can figure out what the issue is, and together work with it. That's a great point.
Exactly. It also goes back to something Karen said, and I don't know if it was last week or in one of our recent conversations, but it's like, what's that shared 10% of things that we both agree on that now allow us to move forward, right? So can we find our shared meaning, and can I get to that through curiosity? And then can we use that, right? To your point, Lynn, what about now? How do we learn together? Because now we've gotten to the same place. So I completely agree with everything you just said around that, and it not being me to you,
Yeah.
but us. And here's this thing over here that we're trying to work
That's so
through.
important. When Peter was talking, it reminded me of the inner work that I think we just more of us need to do. It's just, I don't know a better way to say it, but, it's not taking, it's being able to communicate and not taking disagreement personally. One of the ways that I think about it is like not taking offense, like, and it's part of like the psychological safety where we're giving people the benefit of the doubt, like in the safe space, like there's the speaker being thoughtful about how they're speaking, but that's only going to get you so far. The listener, right, also has to think about their response, right? So it's like it's both speaking and listening, right? And both, there's two sides of the same coin. And so often we focus on the speaker, but it's also not taking offense when people are trying to communicate and maybe not doing such a great job.
Yeah. And, also building on what Kim was saying too, I think that the other skill is empowerment, right? So as you work on all of those things together, and we're finding that shared value, and we're, you and I are together, but it's you empowering me and me empowering you to go on and to go outside of our little silo, and to continue to expand, and that skill, because many people do not possess the skill to allow those around them to be empowered to do things, because we're worried that they'll do it wrong, or we're worried they won't do it in our way. It's something that we need to be teaching folks how to do.
Yeah, that's a great point, which actually reminds me of two other things, which is the first is that these are learnings, right? That what I was saying earlier, that it needs to go across the organization. These are organizational development issues. They're not for, just one person by themselves, like do it. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, it is remarkable how this technology has made the human stuff so much more important. Right? It's like, I don't know. To me, it's the biggest surprise of this technological era, that, we've got all this technology, and what's happening is that the social things, the human interaction things, they're so much more important. Or maybe they're not more important, but it's more obvious now. I don't know, for whatever reason.
I would agree with you 100% that the humanity of our interactions and the value of that particular currency is going to go way up. And if you just look at how easy it is to use AI to create content, The result of that is we're going to be flooded in content, except it's not going to be very good. And so our expectations for what we're looking for, is got to be, the things that will interest us is the things that, that the AI cannot produce. Vulnerability, sharing, all of these things, whereas is the value of that is going to go way, way, way up.
So
And
uniquely human.
yeah, yeah, and we won't really have to worry about it. I mean, it is moving so fast. I mean, ChatGPT will be releasing plugins in the coming weeks. So plug in for a ChatGPT browser, so you can actually ask ChatGPT to do research for you. Yeah, plug in for scheduling, so you can actually have, like all of these things, and it's this, I wanted an Iron Man suit with Jarvis in it. I would have taken an alarm clock with Jarvis in it. But yeah, and now we're 6 months away from having that. It is remarkable how much we will be able to do, but relate. And I think that's actually one of the great fallacies of technology. I remember in the recruiting space, there's a group of people who think like, oh, the machines will just do all the picking of people for us. And I was like, yeah, those people are going to have an opinion on whether or not they're going to join us or not. And so I don't think so. Maybe we'll get better at identifying people, but our need to connect with them ain't going to go away. It's actually, and if we see what's been happening, employees are looking for meaning and agency. They want to know that their work is making a difference in the world, and they want to have some say in how they go about doing it. So ain't no AI is going to do that for us. That's just not going to happen. Yeah.
Great points, Peter. So
Meaning and agency. Those are the two words that I just wrote down. Meaning and agency.
meaning and agency. I'm going to write them down too.
Mm-hmm.
They're not mine. I lots of articles I pulled them from. I like those words too, so that's why I latch onto them so much, because
This isn't really a skill, but I do think it's important. I know that some organizations, when in their transformation journey, they start with this mindset. I know that I had a fixed mindset at one time. I think I had a growth mindset, and then when I went to law school, something happened along the way there. I'm not sure what, and I got a fixed mindset, and I had to undo that. And
how'd you do that?
Well, the first thing was recognizing that I had developed a fixed mindset. Right.
That must
and
have
that
been
was
painful.
just having someone else, from the outside point out like how you communicate a limiting belief. Right. That's what they talked about, limiting beliefs. And so, it was like an exercise basically, where I was writing down, wrote, we had to write something down, and then they just help you to see that, hey, that's a limiting belief. Like having that mindset, having that belief is going to prevent you from moving forward, right? It's the person that says, forgive me if you said this to yourself, but it is a limiting belief. I'm too old to do, I can't learn X, or that's a limiting belief. Like, I mean, you hear it all the time. It's so weird to say it now, because it's so obvious. But if in your mind you think you can't do something, you're already done. You're already done. You've got to have the belief that you can grow. You have to have the belief that you can take on a challenge. You have to have the belief that the future will be better, that your best days aren't behind you, but your best days are ahead of you. If you don't have those beliefs, you're already done.
Well, I am definitely too old to learn how to ride a skateboard. I just want to be real clear.
What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I live in
You
Brooklyn.
might need more pads, but you're not too old.
I live in Brooklyn. I have a gray beard. Yeah, I have tattoos. If I ride a skateboard, it just puts me in a classification that I just don't want to be in.
You don't want to be in that spot. Never mind. I won't say it. You know the one about being too old to be in the club. You don't want to be there either. So that was a great question, Kim. Thank you for asking that. I think we should all think about that, right?
We have a nice little list of skills. So just to recap for anybody who might be listening, it was shared value, courage. I wrote down collaboration, Linwood, as you talked about, like working together, curiosity, learning how to learn, which I will come up with a word for that. I don't quite know what that skill is going to be. Storytelling. I also wrote down not taking things personally. This notion of like meaning and agency, and knowing that we kind of have to show up and be that level of authentic. So it's a good list of like skills that we could kind of pull from, and knowing that this is where we would start, or we would want to look for people to help support the change or support the path forward, who bring a myriad of those to the table. Because then ideally, if people see that in the group, then they'll be drawn to that, and then they'll bring whatever their skills are, and it'll then naturally become what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Very powerful. Well, we've just got to go ahead, Peter.
Well, what do we do with these skills? And I think when we look at kind of what's next for people rising, yeah, how does these insights impact?
Well, I don't want to play dumb here, but there is a digital academy on the horizon, and some of these I thought of for the academy, but I think it's creating this list is great, and I would want to, having had this conversation, I'd love to actually have the conversation again. I think it's just building that academy, and then when you have an academy, then people can choose the order that they want to approach it, what makes sense for their organizations. And I think and then we learn from that, right? Because we may find that there is some logic or some rationale to having a certain kind of an order, right? So I know, for example, in Microsoft's transformation, they started with growth mindset, and they started with nonviolent communication, and growth mindset. Those were the two that they started with, and then they went on from there.
Fascinating. I didn't know that they started the process of nonviolent communication. I thought that was a pretty fringe concept, but
yeah. Well, it's a fringe concept that Satya Nadella knew about, because he had his senior leadership. That's why I kind of went back. He had his senior leadership team read that, not just by way of just a little bit of background. When Satya Nadella took over, somewhere in there, I can't remember exactly, he knew that he needed to change the culture of the organization. Microsoft had a reputation for being a know-it-all culture, and he wanted to change it from being a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. And so my understanding is the first thing that he did, had the leadership team, I don't know how large this group was, read the book Nonviolent Communication. I got it, right? The book. He had them read this book, Nonviolent Communication. Absolutely brilliant book. I highly encourage taking this book up. It's really, really good. It's about, obviously it's about communication, how we talk to people. But then the first thing that they did kind of on a larger scale outside of that leadership team is growth mindset. And they actually brought in Carol Dweck, wrote the book Growth Mindset, and they brought Carol Dweck in. And it sort of makes sense, right? That you would start, with mindset and getting people thinking like I can grow, because it's not just about you, right? It's recognizing that the people that you're working with are not static.
Well, and it's awareness of mindset too, I think, and that you and I have discussed, Lenwood, online the work of the Arbinger Institute, that really is a pioneer in this area, where they recognize that it's your mindset that gives you the behavioral responses that you can have to any situation, that was pretty radical for me to realize.
Yeah.
So you have to pay attention to the stories you're telling yourself, which dictate your mindset. Yeah.
So important. The stories we tell ourselves. I can't tell you, man. It is it's so important. I mean, I personal story. Obviously, we're out of time, so we'll be coming back next week with something different. But yeah, I mean, there's just sometimes, a lot of times, right? People tell themselves the most awful stories.
And as organizations too. It's not just
as organizations too. Yeah.
That's just the way we've always done it.
Yeah. So anyway, our hope is, right, that we'll continue to grow and learn together.
But no skateboards.
Well, not for you.
No.
I reserve the right to skateboard at any age. Everyone, have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us. Don't know, we didn't get a lot of comments in this week, but that's okay too. We'll be back next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Take care, everyone.